Hey everybody, glad you're on. About to share the screen here. And when the mayor's people let me in, we'll shift over there. Uh, Let me tweet this out. Ugh. Okay. Okay.
Sandy Abraham, how are you?
Awesome, man. How you doing?
I'm well.
Yeah, man. The vote happened.
Well, what happened?
I told you in the text. I said that it was 6 yeses. I thought I did. 6 yeses, 1 no, 1 abstention.
Oh, you only said read the.
Oh, yeah, I did say that because you were getting it from Politico, and hey, man, I own 68% of my own C corp. I don't have love for any other media except what they're doing for me. Sorry. So that's just the way it goes. So yeah, but that's what happened.
I hadn't heard of the state funds.
So. Yeah. Well, again, if you'd read Oakland News Now, as others have, you would have asked me about where that was. So, but hey, that's like I said, that's it. Anyway, that aside, how the hell are you?
Wait, still staying with the A's. That's amazing news, right?
Say again, please.
It's amazing news for the A's, right?
Well, no, the A's are not happy because it wasn't their term sheet that the city accepted. It was a vote only. It was never a final vote to begin with. It's not a development agreement. It was simply a vote to say, hey, can we agree on, do we like the direction we're headed in, and can we agree to meet on some more issues? Gotcha. And then head to a December, I believe it would be December meeting regarding the development agreement. That's what it was.
But if today had gone south, that would have been it.
Well, yeah, they would have been saying, "Oh, we're out of here." I don't know. Basically the A's would have taken a giant hit because they got nothing in Vegas. They got no land or anything.
Right. So, and it's kind of questionable whether, competing with the Raiders and the Golden Knights, if they could fill 81, dates a year.
Yeah, I mean, and they're doing their due diligence, but see, that underscores the point. They're going into uncharted territory. It's one thing to say they're going to go there, but the reality is they have no idea how that market behaves for baseball. They are playing in an environment where you've got worldwide economic problems that are being exacerbated by weird weather conditions. And look, all signs to me, and I think they kind of dropped a hint that they're going to do this, point to the A's just simply saying, you know what, we're going to just stay here, even though they haven't said that, because they got
nowhere else to go.
Well, it's going to be harder for them to go someplace else. The better place for them to try to go is Portland, because Portland actually has a plan. They have investors, and that's why I thought they were going at first, and they shifted to Las Vegas. Now, Las Vegas has something that I think is quite tasty in the form of gambling revenues to the tune of roughly $40 million a year. But again, they don't have a champion. They have a city and a region that really is underfunded. They need infrastructure, infrastructure bill to pass. It hasn't happened yet. The hospitality industry needs it. It hasn't happened yet. And you can't fake somebody to death with, oh, we're fine, when it's quite obvious you're not. How's DC, man? Good.
So I told you I got the new product patented.
Oh shit, that's great. Let me call you back, buddy. I got to walk in this press conference.
Okay.
Let's see.
All right. Oh, people are still filing in from the room. Hello, everyone. Thanks for making time. Hi, Zenny. So hopefully all of you have the mayor's joint statement with Vice Mayor Rebecca Kaplan and Council President Nikki Bass. We'll share that again in the chats in case you don't. We had a lot of requests today, so we just wanted to make the mayor available for some brief comments and then open it up to Q&As. And
recording in progress.
And we'll be done. So, Mayor, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Today, the City Council passed a huge milestone and approved a great deal for the Oakland A's, for the community, and for generations of Oaklanders to come. I hope you also saw the tremendous unity in city leadership And I want to commend particularly Council President Nikki Bass and Vice Mayor Rebecca Kaplan. Their counsel, their involvement in the negotiations and in crafting the final resolution that was adopted today was stellar. We are unified in keeping the A's rooted in Oakland in a way that protects our port, protects our community, and protects the taxpayers, is responsible. And we believe in this vision of a world-class waterfront ballpark district that will not only be something that will make the A's and Oaklanders proud, but will generate amazing community benefits, public parks, affordable housing, good union jobs, as well as much needed public infrastructure improvements. We are very close in full agreement with the A's. I know that it was disappointing today that what was voted on by the council did not have full consensus from the team. But I assure you, we are very close. The primary difference is that Oakland is standing firm on community benefits and the sources for funding them. But we will continue to work with the A's to negotiate all differences and to bring as quickly as is practical and responsible a binding term sheet, a development agreement, as well as the final environmental impact report. And that will be the next critical milestone in realizing this incredible vision that we hold for a waterfront ballpark district. With that, I'm happy to take any questions specifically about what the council approved today and the next steps. I think, Justin, if you want to direct traffic, as well as request people to, I think, put their names in the chat or use the hand raise function.
Zenny was first to the quick, so we'll go ahead, Zenny.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes. How are you doing,
hey,
Zenny?
Great. How are you all doing? Great to see you all. Hey, Libby, how you doing?
Good.
Hey,
good
question. Two questions. First of all, a number of us are concerned. I say us, myself, not just Dave Caval, but also Mike Jacob of the Longshoremen, are concerned about the process that introduced this resolution seemingly at the last minute. And in my 33 years, in various views of this, from mayor's aide to intern, all the other stuff, you get buy-in from the developer and the people that you're working with, regardless of the size that they're on. Did anybody stop and say, hey, we need to contact the A's and the others to say this is what we're going to do before we did it? Thanks. Oh, and by the way, that's the first question. The second question has to do with a really nagging tax increment financing issue. The council doesn't understand that we don't have a full 45-year tax increment read with an explanation of the bond issue, the debt coverage ratios, and then that could frame and should frame your conversation with the athletics and the community. There's enough to help the community, but that's not happening. And the numbers that are there by that San Francisco consultant, they made gigantic errors. So there's a number of errors here that really need to be straightened out. I'm asking, are you open to straightening those out? And can you explain the resolution issue? Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Appreciate you.
Sure. I want to say that, remember, we are at a particular moment in this process. The A's put out their proposed term sheet back in April, late April. We have been in constant negotiations with them since that time. We did produce a formal counter proposal, and I personally have been engaged in negotiations with the A's as recently as yesterday. So yes, we have been in constant negotiation with the A's. And based on those negotiations, based on our shared values and vision, we believe the A's can and should accept the terms that the City Council approved today. This is a non-binding agreement. We respect the A's desire to get to a binding development agreement as quickly as possible. And so this sets the framework. And of course, it was preceded by a lengthy workshop on July 8th that also explained a lot of the background information. I also suggest everyone goes to the FAQ section on the City of Oakland's website. that should help explain some of the background. Zenny, with respect to the tax increment financing, because that our traditional tool of redevelopment is no longer available to cities, it's made this project much more complicated. We are proposing to use a new tool called the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District in combination with a community financing district. These are relatively new tools that have not been used extensively, but they have been used somewhat, and that is what we're proposing to do. The full details, as well as additional analysis and economic projections, will be available as we move towards the development agreement, the DA, the binding agreement. And we are excited about ensuring that these are project generated revenues. These are revenues that, but for the project, the city would not have. And so we want to be clear, because people are talking a lot about what is the public investment. These are dollars generated by the project itself. And these tools, like an enhanced infrastructure financing district, were designed to allow cities to bond against these revenues so that we can make the improvements that will create much larger revenues for years to come that will benefit Oakland and the whole region.
Good. I'm going to come back to you, Zenny, and read a few questions before that. One here, Mayor, from Keith Burbank at Bay City News. Have the A's said they will continue to negotiate, and will the city council meet again before the summer recess?
I believe the city council has another council meeting scheduled. I am not aware of any plans to take this issue up prior to the council recess, but you would need to direct that question to the city council president. We have and will continue to welcome further negotiations with the A's. That is how we are going to get this very complex deal done, is by engaging constantly in negotiations. So we are excited to get back to that negotiating table to continue to flesh out the details that will be required in the next step, which is the binding development agreement, as well as continue to work out any outstanding differences. We are always going to be available to talk through those differences.
And KRWN is asking, what are the primary differences between today's term sheet and
you know what, I will talk about some of the primary differences between today's term sheet and the original proposal by the A's back in April, is that this proposal relies on only one infrastructure financing district. That is the project site itself. That is to ensure that the project pays for the project, that the increased value that is being generated from other parts of West Oakland or downtown, that those will continue to benefit the city and pay for the much needed services, but that the project revenues themselves are what we will rely on to invest in making this project happen and the community benefits that need to be part of the project. Another significant difference is the commitment around affordable housing. We propose a 30% commitment, with 15% of that on the Howard Terminal site itself. And then finally, there is clarity that actually, let me think about this for a second. The other piece about the affordable housing is that the A's are meeting their obligations under the city's impact fees, as well as state redevelopment law. Those are some of the primary differences. The one EFID, the reliance on the state laws and impact fees with regard to affordable housing. And then one significant difference, and I want to acknowledge that this is the primary difference between where the city council and I am and where the A's are, is the degree and source for funding a community benefits fund. The proposal that we've put forward is through a condominium transfer fee. as well as a in lieu use of the transportation impact fee, which the A's have requested we waive, and that those be the funding source for a community benefits fund that would actually be controlled by community stakeholders for the 66-term lease. So that's probably the biggest difference that we have to date. And the other things are things that we do believe the A's are in agreement with.
I go over here to JR. I believe that's JR Stone. JR, you ready?
Yes. Thanks, Mayor. And thanks for hearing my question. I was just curious. I know Dave Cavill in the past has said that a vote for the city plan was a vote against their plan and wasn't in agreement with that plan last Friday. What's changed since Friday? Has anything changed since Friday?
Yes, there were some significant changes since Friday. One of those changes is the city did make it clear, and this was in the A's original proposal in April, that the city will assume responsibility for the off-site transportation and infrastructure improvements. We want to recognize that we are fortunate to be in a unique moment where this country is making unprecedented investments in infrastructure. And so we believe that we can, in this moment, take on that commitment while still being true to our values of protecting the taxpayers, the city's general fund, the county's general fund, because we are counting on the county's participation, as well as our port operations. So that is a big change that was in today's amended resolution that was not in the proposal published Friday. We also increased the affordable housing commitment from 30% to 35%. That was an improvement that the council felt very strongly about. So those were, I would say, the two largest distinctions between Friday's version and what got passed today.
And Zenny, let's go back to you.
Yeah, sure. Hey, thank you very much. On my show, the A's president said that he was actually open to having a development partner involved and that he would accept actually changing from the enhanced infrastructure approach to, for example, the Community Revitalization and Investment Authority Act, which actually is more like the old redevelopment system we used to have, right? And it has actually a better requirement for affordable housing, which might be more to what you would like. Have you had those conversations with the A's president? Are you also open to, since nothing really much has been done since SB 293 Skinner, in terms of negotiating with, for example, the County of Alameda, we would be able to move forward in a way that's mutually beneficial?
Zenny, those issues have not come up in my negotiations or discussions with the Oakland A's. To date, the primary tax increment financing vehicle has been an enhanced infrastructure financing district. But of course, we're always open to other suggestions and to explore other tools that might help us reach our mutual goals. I see a question from Dan to be more specific about the differences on affordable housing. So yes, we did increase the affordable housing commitment from 30 to 35%. Like Friday, we are requiring that 15% of that be on site, on the actual Howard Terminal site. That would be roughly about 450 units of affordable housing as part of the total 3,000 proposed housing units on the Howard Terminal site.
And Bill Shaken, I believe, has your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask, in the hour since the meeting ended, have you spoken with anybody from the A's or Major League Baseball to see where they're at on this?
Not since the meeting has ended, but okay. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. Again, we've enjoyed very good open lines of communication with the A's. We share a vision for a world-class ballpark. And I believe that when the A's say that they want to remain rooted in Oakland, that means committed to our values. And that means being serious about our community benefits.
And not seeing any more hands or questions in the chat. All right, we could take two more here.
I can say that verbally, the A's agreed to having 15% of affordable housing on site as part of their housing development. They will also comply with affordability requirements under state redevelopment law. Much of the site is under a redevelopment area, as well as they've agreed to create a $50 million fund that's funded through the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District revenues. And that $50 million fund, which will be created by a 20% set aside from the IFD over time, that will fund affordable housing, anti-displacement measures, first-time home buyer. There's a range of kind of affordable housing and anti-displacement investments that can be made through that additional off-site affordable housing commitment that will be funded through the IFD. And there could be other resources also brought to bear to support that increase from 30 to 35%.
And Bill, did you have another question?
I can also say, I'm looking at JR's question. We believe that the A's are in agreement with the relocation agreement, the non-relocation clause that is in the term sheet that we published on Friday. We have reason to believe that the A's are in agreement with that term. I see a request for a statement in Spanish. Es muy importante que este proyecto es no solamente bien para béisbol, pero también para esta comunidad. Y una cosa que es más importante es viviendas accesibles. Todos saben que hay un crisis de viviendas en este Bay Area y es muy importante que este proyecto crear fondos para hacer más viviendas que la gente que están trabajando que es accesible para los trabajadores, para las personas, las familias que están sufriendo ahora en este económico. Este proyecto es bien para esta comunidad y para los Oakland A's. Y es importante que este proyecto tiene parques para el público, tienen trabajos buenos, con pago bien y proteger los trabajadores. Y también es importante que este proyecto ayude a mejorar la seguridad de esta parte de la ciudad y proteger el puerto, porque el puerto de Oakland es una parte de la económico de esta región que es muy, muy importante. Y lo siento, no puedo hacer cosas mejor y yo puedo tratar un otro vez mejor. I'm sorry, I'll try better next time. The clarification, the non-relocation time period, I do not know if that was specified. The start time will be specified in the final development agreement.
Let me ask Ron to unmute himself.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can.
Okay, great. So the A's have had this deadline of July, and Dave has talked about July 20th, and that's either put up or shut up kind of a date. But does the city have a deadline of its own to resolve some of these outstanding issues into a development agreement? Is that something that the city feels has to be done this year?
We have been led primarily by the A's deadlines. They are understandably anxious to get going on building something because they have invested tremendously in getting us to the place where we are today. We appreciate the tremendous investment in everything that has brought us to this moment. It is not a small investment. And so we respect that the A's want some certainty and they want some reasonable time frame to allow them to start playing ball in a new ballpark. We recognize also that with that clarity will allow us to give them more certainty in their current lease at the Coliseum site. So again, we understand their reason for certainty and speed, and we are doing everything we can to meet their deadlines. But they are their deadlines, not ours. But we are absolutely respecting them and working our best to meet them.
Let's go Dan and Ron, and Zenny will round it out with you.
Mayor, thank you. So let me see if I'm clear on the affordable housing element here. You guys want 35% of it to be affordable housing?
35, the equivalent of 35%.
35%, of which 15 would be on site. The other 20 presumably then would be off site somewhere.
Correct.
They're willing to give you 15% plus 50 million out of one of the infrastructure districts. Which infrastructure district?
Dan, our proposal that was approved today has only one infrastructure district.
Okay.
And it is only on the project site itself.
So it's the project site infrastructure district. So then from a dollars and cents perspective, because pardon me, I'm not clear on what the difference, the 20% affordable housing represents in dollars and cents. But the delta between the two of you seems to be 20% versus the $50 million. If I'm understanding you correctly.
No, verbally, I want to be careful that I don't put words in the A's mouth.
Sure.
Negotiations often are contingent on a totality of agreement. But let me just say that I have good reason to believe that the A's are willing to construct 15% of the project's housing to be affordable, protected affordable housing. And I'll be very clear that they would cover the totality of the expense of 8%. That is what they are mandated to do under the City of Oakland's impact fee laws, as well as state redevelopment laws. But over time, they could get reimbursed from not the $50 million fund, but the infrastructure district, the other funds from the infrastructure district. They could get reimbursed for the additional on-site affordable housing over time. In addition to that, they've agreed that the project-based enhanced infrastructure financing district will also set aside every year 20% until it has built a total of a $50 million fund to address off-site affordable housing needs. And it's equivalent. Forgive me for not having the dollars available in my mind, but it's the equivalent of a 20% requirement as 20% of 3,000 units. However, the community has been very clear that they'd like to use that fund in a more flexible way than just constructing new affordable housing. They'd like to use it to prevent people from being displaced from the housing that they're in now by potentially acquiring existing housing and placing affordability protections on it. They might choose to put some of the money into first-time homebuyer funds. It could even help support some of these community land banks. But the community benefits process really allowed us to hear from the most impacted communities what they'd like to see. And that is very important to the community addressing Oakland's housing affordability crisis, and to do it in a way that has flexibility and is not only building new housing, but also protecting people and bringing affordability to them where they live today.
Okay, we'll go to Bill and then Zenny and then maybe some final comments about what's next, Mayor. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. Just to follow up, if Major League Baseball proceeds as the commissioners said they would last week, whereas if the A's didn't get what they wanted today, they would be set loose to travel across North America in search of a new home, how does that impact what you're doing?
I am very focused on our goal, and that is to create a world-class waterfront ballpark district in Oakland. And I continue to believe that Oakland offers something that no other city in the world can offer. The views from Howard Terminal are equal to none. To look out on our spectacular bay with the mighty cranes of the Port of Oakland in the foreground and the iconic skyline of San Francisco in the background with the Bay Bridge and its nighttime lights. There is no place on earth that will offer that type of spectacular environment. And we believe that our values are aligned. The tremendous environmental protections that the A's have already committed to, the union jobs, not just during the construction of this project, but the operational jobs that will be permanent on that site. This project is projected to create 25,000 construction jobs during the project period, and then another permanent 7,100 good union, fair chance jobs. And that is something that we know the A's value and are committed to. We know the A's have been rooted in Oakland, and the Fisher family is rooted and committed to the Bay Area. And so while we respect that Major League Baseball and the A's will have to do what they'll have to do, we are committed to continuing to negotiate with them regardless. And we believe that there is a shared vision and that we are making tremendous progress on a project that can benefit the A's and Oakland for years to come. And yes, it is true. It is 104 degrees in Las Vegas today. And I think it's a nice 72 degrees here in Oakland.
Zenny, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. Yeah, Ms. Mayor, when he was head of Giants Enterprises, my friend Pat Gallagher was fond of reminding me and everybody else that Pat Pill Park, as we used to call it, was a large-scale event center, more than a ballpark. When I headed the sports commission for Oakland, I put together a list of 220 sports events that Oakland could go after for many facilities. To that end, have the athletics presented you, or the city presented your staff with a list of possible events beyond baseball that could be hosted at this large-scale event center that Oakland really does need. Thank you.
It's my understanding that the A's proposal does include an event venue. And I do want to clarify, in the amendments that were read on the floor today, there actually was a clarification that the relocation agreement, the 25-year term, would start at the first home game played in the new stadium.
A clarification real quick, Ms. Mayor, if possible. Clarification real quick, Ms. Mayor. I'm talking about at the facility itself, because the facility, as is true for many ballparks in the United States, holds many different events, including conventions. Have the athletics or the city, and this is not the event center, have the athletics or the city broke that out for you in the way that the Giants did with Giants Enterprises and many other organizations have in terms of facility mismanagement. Thanks.
Zenny, at this point in the process and in our non-binding term sheet agreements, we've been very focused on the financing sources, and that type of detail is not one that I'm familiar with at this time, although I'm sure it's something that certainly can come up as we move towards the development agreement.
And then lastly, Mayor, there's a question about what comes next. And if you wanted to wrap this up with any final thoughts before we end it off.
Sure. The next step after the non-binding term sheet is adopted, which happened today, is to get right back down to negotiations and work out the immense details of this incredibly complicated process. The project is going to require many, many details that need to be laid out in tremendous specificity. That development agreement is our next step, as well as finalizing the environmental impact report and certifying the mitigation measures that are required to address any environmental impacts. Those are our next milestones. We know the A's are anxious to get to that before the end of the year, possibly as early as this fall, and we are going to do everything in our power to meet those deadlines.
All right, all. I think we're set. Thanks very much for making time, and we will see you next time.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. So there, folks, there you have it. There is Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf on Livestream. Revealing her thoughts about what happened today. Concerned about some details. And it's clear to me that, and I think Libby said it herself, that the process is new for them. I mean, it's not new for me. The process is new to them. And they're learning as they go. And I have to admit, there are enough of us who know how to do this, and we're not being called on to do it. And for some particular reason, they're trying to hold it, close to the vest for themselves. I don't understand what their thinking is. Hold on a second. They're not really interested, it seems, in having, for example, a task force, right? That can really help out. And regarding what I was talking about regarding breaking out and identifying events, or finances. Let's take taxing and financing. We did that in the case of the Raiders Stadium that the city offered as an alternative to Las Vegas, and we kept doing it. That's the one aspect of this project that is painfully different from how we handle the Raiders. In this instance, and I think Libby sort of alluded to why, it's being held close to the vest in terms of the finances. But we didn't do that before. You knew when you looked at the Raiders stadium proposal from the city and Fortress Investments, you knew where each dollar was coming from, be it bond issue, private financing. It was all there. It was all laid out. Okay? It was all laid out. Not this time. I didn't address the questions from the other media people because there's a gigantic disconnect and misunderstanding between tax increment financing and the enhanced industrial development district. The district should not be your first concern. Your first question should be, how much assessed value base year are you targeting to be built? Because that will drive your tax increment, okay? And so anyway, there it is. Subscribe to Zenny62, bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com. That ends this broadcast. Thanks.